Welcome, everybody. My name is Hannah. I'm from the St. Louis Zoo. I'm the manager of docents and interpreters. And
I'm Alyssa, and I'm head of content strategy at EcoTok Collective.
And out of respect for everybody's time, it is exactly 1:30. We're going to get going. I put some sticky notes on each of the tables. We are going to do some actual work at your tables. We don't have a lot of time to dig into lots of questions. We will be able to take your questions throughout a little bit. But if there's something that you have this aha moment, or you have a question that might require a little bit more discussion, please write it on your sticky notes and feel free at any time to put it up on the question or aha tabs that are up there. And then we can all see each other's questions and work and help answer some of those. I do know we have the ability to answer questions in the app of Huva as well. So, and please take care of whatever biological needs you need to do. If you need to stand up and walk around, that's great too. Are we ready to get started? All right. So like I said, my name is Hannah Phillips, she, her pronouns. I have dark brown hair with silver on top. I'm wearing black pants, red turtleneck with a gray sweater. We're going to get started with climate change communication and strategic framing techniques with the National Network for Ocean and Climate Change Interpretation. I'll stand over here with the. So this beginning part, we're going to go through really quickly so we can really dig into the actual strategies that you all will be able to practice today. But we are going to go over what NOKI is, where the strategies come out of in terms of their research, and how we can move forward. So this work becomes really important because we know that 76% of people in the US think climate change is happening now. Yet only 61% discuss climate change rarely or never. And only 24% of people hear, 24% hear people they know talk about climate change each month. So we know these conversations aren't happening, but everybody wants to have them. This usually comes from most people want to talk about it, but they're afraid their friends are going to think they're freaks. But everybody wants to do it. So let's work on some strategies that we know work with folks as they go through life. When we have conversations about climate change, we want to keep them hopeful, civic-minded, and productive moving forward. If we don't do that, we will lose people. And we cannot do our work and make change for this planet without people. And we all know how bad it is. It's even worse. So how can we motivate and inspire folks to take change in their lives? And when I'm talking about people, I'm talking about everybody. Your weird aunt at Thanksgiving, your mom, your friends, kind of thing. And when we have these conversations, we know from nationwide research, it is impactful. People feel hopeful. They feel more confident to have their own conversations with their own friends. So it's really important work. One of the big solutions for climate change is simply talking about it, making sure that it's normal to care for the planet and be concerned. So what is NOKI? NOKI is the National Network for Ocean and Climate Change Interpretation. It was started by the New England Aquarium back in 2011 with an NSF grant to train zoo and aquarium education people in strategic framing techniques, which is just making critical choices in the words, metaphors, and values we use around climate change. And from that network has grown to over 800 members. Check out noki.org to learn more. And we do workshops and trainings all over the country and are now doing a crash course in Canada starting this spring. The idea is that we all talk the same language. So here is the mission. Together, we can train enough voices, improving communication techniques to shift the national conversation about climate change to be more positive, civic-minded, and solutions-focused. We know that all the talk out in the media, regardless of where it's coming from, focuses a lot on the impacts, and then just says caused by climate change, but never digs into the actual mechanisms. And there's a lot of confusion From the Yale program on climate change communication, we know that the vast majority of Americans, over 80%, fall into the category of cautious or concerned, meaning like they know stuff, but not really sure, and like, eh. So what kind of common language can we all have to help people understand that? So they're hearing the same thing over and over and over again to really understand what's going on. So we're going to watch a quick video. I hope the sound works on the origins of Noki. It is a little dated, so they're going to say how big the network is, and we're even bigger now, which is great.
The National Network for Ocean and Climate Change Interpretation, known as NOCI, is a committed group of informal science educators who are changing the conversation on climate change. Rather than doom and gloom, they're focused on hope and civic action. Educators at aquariums, zoos, and museums facilitate millions of conversations each year, but climate conversations weren't happening. The science educators were unsure of how to guide them productively in a family-oriented setting. Thanks to funding from the National Science Foundation, a partnership was formed between climate scientists, informal science educators, and social scientists who created a training program for interpreters at aquariums, zoos, nature centers, and parks. The program worked with strategic framing, an empirical approach to science translation to help interpreters in their work and in their conversations with friends, family, and colleagues. The NOCI program launched in 2011 and has been refined as the network grew. Program evaluations have found that our alumni develop more confidence in their ability to explain climate science, increasing their willingness to discuss climate concepts. NOCI language increased people's understanding of climate change, their support for solutions, and commitment to civic engagement. And we've shown that strategic framing can turn concerned individuals to active and engaged citizens. By July 2017, over 400 colleagues from 170 institutions in 38 states had joined our community, and our community is reporting consistent improvements in its own effectiveness. Using innovation, collaboration, and empirical inquiry, NOCI has launched a growing network of climate interpreters with tools that help millions of Americans understand why our climate is changing and motivate them to get started on solutions in their community.
Thank you. So that's Noki. And like I said, our network is even bigger. We're going to skip through some of these slides. It's all done through evaluation. We work with the Frameworks Institute, which does a lot of very specific sociological, anthropological, psychological research about different messages for different programs. And Noki is regularly evaluated, and we actually make major changes based on those evaluations. For example, when I first started, there were 4 values that we used, and a few years later discovered we could probably pare that down to 2 because they are very similar. So this is the St. Louis Zoo position statement on climate change. When I first got started, I wanted to make sure that we had a position statement and ran this all the way up through the board. And so what it says is scientific consensus holds that climate change is interrupting natural cycles, causing habitat loss, and prompting more extreme weather patterns. All of this affects animals. As a conservation organization, the St. Louis Zoo has a responsibility to constructively engage in climate change solutions. It's been 10 years. We're probably going to edit this down a little bit. But it's helped us a lot when somebody says, so what do you say about climate change? Yeah, here it is. So where do we start? When we want to communicate with people, it's really important that we're relevant to their lives, right? You don't just come at somebody if you really want to have a good conversation. We need to know how people think. And it's simple, like, have you been here before? Tell me what you know about this thing. Then you can figure out where to start in your conversation, because it is a conversation. It is back and forth. What we're going to go over today is going to be very scripted. It's kind of like workbook when you're learning a new language. We know in real life it goes back and forth. But in terms of really being strategic and practicing the techniques we're going to use today, we're going to do some fill in the blanks. So just be prepared for that. So looking at these pictures of the ocean, what are some words that jump out to you? Popcorn. Blue, fresh, sparkly, vacation, water, sunlight, pretty. Yeah, clean. Very good. So these are the first bunch of pictures that when you type the word ocean into Google, this is what comes up. And we know that when we do a search in any of our search engines, the answers that come up are the things that have been clicked on the most. So what does this tell you about how people think about the ocean? It's clean, right? It's vast. How many pictures have like underwater specific things? Like a couple, and they're not very deep, right? And it's pretty and tropical. So this tells me most people don't really know about the ocean. So would you come at someone, if you're going to talk about the ocean, with all the marine biology, chemical processes? Or are you going to talk about what do you like about the ocean? Right? Those are the pathways that are in people's minds, and we want to create new pathways. And the only way to do that is to hear the same thing over and over and over again. And that's why the Noki network and the trainings that we do are so important, that common language. So no matter where anyone goes in the world, they're hearing the same kind of language, just because there's so much confusion out there in the world. And where zoos and aquariums become so important is that we see the Association of Zoo and Aquariums, folks that are in that, which is about 220 institutions. We see over 180 million people a year, which is more than all of the professional sporting stadiums in the country combined come through our doors. So they are excited about nature. They care. They also see us as apolitical and the most reputable resource to be talking about climate change, expect us to talk about it, and expect us to give them the resources to do it. So we are primed for engaging with the public. And I will tell you, after 10 years of working with our general public here in St. Louis, had wonderful, I can count on like 3 sort of weird conversations I've had in 10 years, and they were like legit weird. People are desperate for this information and how they can engage. I've always viewed our institutions as places of practice where people can come and practice composting. We have composting in our cafes. When they visit our grizzly bear exhibit, we've got bear-proof trash cans for them to practice using, because we're about how people and bears can live together, right? They can come here and practice having a non-judgmental, productive, hopeful conversation about climate change. And Noki trainings are available to the whole public. Anybody can take them. It's great. So let's dig into some of this stuff. So some default thinking about climate change. I love this comic about a polar bear sitting on an island with a palm tree wearing sunglasses. And the couple watching it on the TV says, "Why don't the greenhouse gases escape through the hole in the ozone layer?" You all know. But here it's confusing, right? There was the hole in the ozone layer. But it's a great example, even though it's a completely different environmental issue, a great example of when the global community came together very quickly and all agreed, we're not going to use these chemicals anymore. And now the ozone is doing much better. It's still a hole, but it's not nearly as bad. You don't hear it about as much. And so again, it just goes to show the confusion about environmental issues. Climate change also gets confused with air pollution. And part of what we've learned is we need to be very clear about the cause, the effect, and the impact, because everybody's filling in gaps of their knowledge with whatever they. So how can we help them with that? This is the other one. Two people are walking down the street, and one says to the other one, "My desire to be well informed is currently at odds with my desire to remain sane." Who feels that deep? Someone who gets sent emails about just how bad it is, and it's even worse than you thought. And go, yep, got it. I don't need to read the whole thing. We have to be very careful with our tone of voice. If you come at people with "the sky is falling," it's a disaster. This is a crisis. We're not minimizing that. We need to act, and we need to act quickly. But how many people hear the song "In the Arms of an Angel"? How many of you change the channel? Or go, "Ugh." I'm an example of the 1980s Save the Rainforest campaign. I was 8 years old when I saw pictures of burning rainforests. How does that motivate me as an 8-year-old kid in upstate New York? Help the rainforests. Right? Most people, it's this big crazy thing happening really far away, and so I just need to get to work. Right? So how can we engage with those folks? We have to be relevant to their lives and what is going on, and be respectful of what is going on in their lives. And I've had major conversations around climate change without ever mentioning the words climate change. Because at the end of it, I'm not here to convince people it's happening. I'm here to help them on their path, to be curious, to go, all right, that's a win. Because then they're more likely to come back and ask questions or go research something on their own. That's what we want. So how do we do this? Strategic framing. Again, this comes out of the Frameworks Institute. They do stuff on anti-smoking campaigns. They do all kinds of things. And they came up with this idea of strategic framing, which really is just about making good choices with our words when we talk to people about climate change. And through their research and help with the Noki network, we were able to come up with specific values, metaphors, and ways of talking about solutions that really are sticky and impactful in our brains. And I will be sending you home with resources. It's a much bigger program than what we have time to go over today, so I'm just giving you the 1 or 2 things that we're going to practice. So we need to tell a complete story. People are getting pieces, and people know that there's the weather, and there's climate, and there's the ocean, but they don't really know how the dots are connected. Or if they've connected the dots, they've done it in a weird way and took some left turn and filled it in with some other knowledge. So we need to make sure they get a complete story. I will also say, as someone who works with the general public, I have these conversations in 3 minutes. It doesn't have to be this long, involved thing. You do not have to have a PhD in climate science. In fact, it's probably better that you don't. Because people just need to know, why should I care? What are the causes and impacts? And what can I do about it? I will point out when we're talking community level solutions, I'm not necessarily talking about running for mayor in your town. Schools are a community. This is a community. Facebook, book clubs, places of worship are all different kinds of communities. The goal is that you are joining others. You're not just the only person out here. I have solar panels, but my neighbors don't. Right? You join something. People like joining stuff. So let's start. We like to use tested values. How many of you have heard the phrase universal values? For those of you who don't, universal values are things that no matter where you're from in the world, no matter where you grew up or how you go through life, we all understand the feeling of family, champion, beauty, hunger, home. We may define them all a little differently, but the general sense, core of that, is the same. That's how we become relevant to people we don't know. And there's a big mistake. I have fallen into this trap of assuming people care about the same things I do. Had a very surprising conversation with a family member once. I thought cared about the same things I do about climate change. But that they care about the same things we do when they don't. And if you don't know them, you need to hit the heart. It's another trap to fall into if people just knew how bad it was. Yeah, where's that gotten us? Oh, that's too big. I can't handle it. They have to care first. There's lots of things I could be donating money to that I don't because it doesn't hit my heart the same way. Not that it's a bad organization. There are other things that I care about that are more important. So I put my resources that are limited over here. So how do we tap into that? We use two different values. The first one is protection. And that's that we have a duty to safeguard the well-being of people and places. You can also get to this same value using stewardship. It's like a bunch, because there's a whole list. But what this value does is that it shows concern for others is the right thing to do. Let's take measures to eliminate or reduce risks. We must protect and preserve the habitats and ecosystems we depend on. Are these all things you have it said in your life? Oh, good, you're already practicing. You got it. But what happens is we're going to use this as a strategic part of your conversations to tap into that relevant piece of the heart. The second value that we use is responsible management. Innovation comes out of this one as well. You can tap into this with innovation. That taking common sense steps today is in the interest of future generations. Let's look ahead to handle problems before they get worse. Responsible managers keep an open mind, look to evidence, and take a level-headed step-by-step approach. Future generations depend on the decisions we make today. Again, are these all things you have said in your life to somebody around this topic? Good, you're already practicing. I will give you one tripping point. This has been my challenge in learning all of this, and I've been doing this for 10 years. Future generations really needs to stay with the responsible management value. It is very easy to say, we want to protect the places today for future generations of otters and people. What happens is it cues up protection and responsible management at the same time in the brain. This is all unconscious, by the way. People can handle two values at the same time. We do all the time, but it's really hard and confusing. So my practice is when I'm using the responsible management value in my conversations, that's where I put future generations. If I'm going to write something and use protection, I just don't use future generations because I know it, for me, in my practice, it confuses the issue. You can do it, but you got to double down on that original value. So what does it look like? We might say, it's important that we take responsible steps to manage the issues facing our environment, to leave our planet in good shape for future generations of animals, plants, and people. Or if you're at the zoo, we, like many people at the zoo, believe in safeguarding people and places from harm for the well-being of animals and people. And again, you notice we have animals and people. We want to make sure that we're helping folks know that people are a part of nature and not apart from nature. We're all connected. So now that people care, let's help them understand the mechanisms. And this is a big proponent. Even if you don't get to values, I don't know if I have quite enough copies for everybody, but we'll email you all at the end with these resources. We're going to use a metaphor called the heat trapping blanket. Some of you have maybe heard this, but it's now getting out there a little bit more. But what we know is people don't understand the mechanism. They know that climate change is happening. They don't really know how it's actually happening. How is carbon dioxide changing the climate, which impacts the weather and all of these other things? Scientists have a really hard time with this because they're like, it's so much more complicated than that. I know, but I personally haven't had an earth science class in 20 years. My mother hasn't had one since 1965. So like I was saying in our conversations, we're here not only to lead people to the door, open the door, we want to invite them in. So we have to appreciate where they're coming from and what they already know. You ask them, what do you know about this? And they know a lot. Great, you know to jump ahead. But for most people, they go to solutions without you even prompting them. When they finally understand, because of this thing is happening, here's what we can do about it. So the metaphor we're going to study today is the heat trapping blanket. But this is also a very funny comic. Some scientists had a blackboard, and in the middle of all the formulas, it says, I think you should be more explicit here in step 2, which says, and then a miracle occurs. We skip steps in our communication, and we have to make sure we connect those dots. Use explanatory chains. Because when people are more likely to act when they know how something works. Also a funny comic, if you're a Parks and Rec fan, I don't know what I just saw, but at this point, I'm afraid to act. We need to help people understand the mechanisms at work. And when linked to causes and impacts, they're motivated to be productive and consider multiple solutions. And it gives people a role in the story. So, Frameworks Institute and the National Network for Ocean and Climate Change Interpretation came up with 4 different metaphors that we use to help people understand climate change. Today, we're going to focus on the heat trapping blanket, but regular versus rampant is another one I use a lot. And basically, yes, there are regular amounts of carbon dioxide in our atmosphere and our Earth systems that help keep everything going as normal and regular. But when we burn fossil fuels like coal, oil, and natural gas, we release rampant amounts of carbon dioxide, which is causing problems. Frameworks dug into the word excess versus rampant. They discovered that the alliteration of regular and rampant is really sticky and impactful. And avoiding the word natural, that cues up in the human mind that, oh, it's nature, it'll just fix itself. I will tell you, I make mistakes about this all the time, and it's okay. This is all practice. The more you do it, the better you get. The climate's heart is how you connect oceans. We also know that unless you live near an ocean or visit it often, most people don't feel connected to it. And how the heck does that influence the climate? So quickly, that one is just like your heart pumps blood throughout your body, making sure it gets to the right places. The ocean does that with the Earth's climate by moving heat and moisture around the Earth. Osteoporosis, see, kids even know this. I'm not good with ocean acidification as not a chemistry person. This is really difficult. But basically, all the little animals that are the building blocks of the ocean food web are not able to grow strong shells. Because when carbon dioxide is absorbed into the ocean, hydrogen ions are released, and it breaks down, makes calcium bicarbonate, which is bad for shells. And no, you can't throw a bunch of Tums into the ocean. So let's look at the heat trapping blanket. This is the one I use the most, which says that the atmosphere is like a blanket that surrounds the Earth. When we burn fossil fuels like coal, oil, and methane or natural gas, yes, you have to call those out specifically, we add more and more carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, which thickens the blanket. The thicker the blanket gets, the more heat is trapped underneath. And this blanket effect leads to warming, which disrupts the climate and then whatever environmental issue you want to talk about. You can use the hand motions where you make a blanket around the Earth. People get this. And the Earth can't kick its foot out when it gets too hot under that blanket. People go to solutions. Oh, we shouldn't burn as much fossil fuels. We should have more public transit. They go to solutions all by themselves. And so then your job as the communicator is to help navigate and guide them through those conversations. So what does it look like in action? When we use fossil fuels like coal, oil, and methane or natural gas for energy, we release carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. This excess carbon dioxide builds up in the atmosphere, acting like a heat trapping blanket. warming the air, land, and sea. A warming planet, for example, causes plants to bloom before the pollinators, bees, butterflies, and other insects are present to feed and help the plants reproduce. This is important to people as pollinators are responsible for making many of the fruits and vegetables we like to eat. When pollinators miss the blooming window, it means they're not able to feed their or our families. What do you all think of that? Thermometers. Okay. So what we did is we started with the big cause. We added a metaphor and connected the dots. We stated the problem, and then we stated what's at stake. Again, a complete story. For our purposes today, this is pretty scripted, but you can have this conversation so quickly. I'm so glad you asked about why we used excess instead of rampant. I could have used rampant here, but one thing I'm very cautious of is mixing metaphors. It gets a little confusing for folks. You can do it, and I have, and it's been fine in everyday speak. But to be clear, for training purposes, we left it out so we're not mixing our metaphors, because it confuses the issue for people. So if you're having a conversation, try to stick to one or two. So that's our complete story. Why does it matter? So that protection and responsible management. How does it work? Using those explanatory metaphors, explanatory chains. How do we improve the situation? Let's do solutions. Woo! Also fun comics. So the one on your left is black and white with 3 panels, and there's a young girl in the middle of a garbage dump with 1 broom all by herself that says, "This task feels too big." And then she's recycling in the middle one and says, "This task feels too small." And then the third one, she's helping install solar panels with other people and says, "This task feels just right." And it's because she's joined others. We need to move on from recycling being a solution to all environmental problems. You all get on board with this? That was the thing for a long time. If you ask somebody, what do you do for conservation? What do you do for the planet? Oh, I recycle. Great. But it's a really long walk with recycling and climate change. So thank you for doing that. And you pivot and go to the next thing. This other colored comic on the right-hand side of the screen says, the first panel is normal. So this is pre-COVID, when we had lots of airplanes and kids in school and desks. And there's a money man on top of a money pile. The middle one is when we were all on lockdown, which was hard in a lot of ways, but remember all the skies cleared up. And then the third one is windmills and people, and the money man looks like he's in a cage. But the one person says, "I can't wait till this is all over and we can go back to normal." And the other person image says, "But what if we went forward instead?" Yeah, that's the nice one. All right, so how do we improve the situation? Community level solutions. People like joining stuff. It's really important because climate change is so big. Most people can't deal with thinking about the global scale. They need to think about going to work, feeding their family, taking care of their lives. So how can we offer them ways to engage that matches the scale of the problem? So yes, we need international global economic policy change, of course. But for most of us, and most of the people we know in our lives and come across, that's not an accessible thing for them to get involved with. But they might be able to get a program with the PTA at their school and do an energy audit with the kids and the teachers and challenge another school to that same energy audit to see who can lower their energy, right? Green School Challenge. I think there's a few different types of those programs that exist throughout the country. We have the Green Business Challenge in St. Louis and the Green Dining Alliance, right? It's a way for organizations, companies, and restaurants to be part of a community of people taking steps to do right for the planet. We need to foster engagement and hope by framing the climate change as a problem that can be addressed at the collective level through practical steps by an informed, engaged community. And again, that community can look like a lot of different things. We do have to be specific with programs, initiatives, or approaches. So when it comes to this kind of communication, our focus really is on shifting energy, being energy efficient, and talking about it, because for most of the people I interact with, and we will interact with, this is where they can get involved. If you know people or you're working with a different group, you know your audience and what's important to them. You know where to start in the solutions that you provide them. But for every day, going out and talking to folks, these are collective, local, and they exist. In 2017, Frameworks did some more specific research and discovered there are certain words that cue up unproductive ways of thinking and gave us alternatives. So in the orange box on the left, words to use with caution: politicians. Try using civic leaders instead. Policies. How about approaches? Laws. Perhaps say programs. Regulations. Say the state or city name. The word government can be problematic for some people, so you can use the word municipal instead. Again, our goal is to have a good conversation. Here's a really long thing, but I'll read it quickly about what a solution might look like. We at the park are dedicated to working towards handling these problems before they get too big to handle. Responsible management value. It's not just us, though. Communities around the state have been asking their leaders for better food options. Community gardens help because they can make climate-friendly foods more accessible and reduce the CO2 emitted when transporting vegetables to your grocery store. They're also great at helping us adapt to the intense rainstorms we're getting as an effect of climate change by absorbing the storm water. And they're great places for the community to come together. I bet you're not the only person in your neighborhood that's concerned with the abandoned lots. I would start talking to your neighbors to see who else is interested. The Belle Isle Salt Marsh in East Boston was restored because neighbors in the area wanted to keep that area for recreational uses and come together to make sure that it happened. By talking to your friends and family about how and why you're taking action, you can help us protect current and future generations of pollinators and people by tackling the source of the problem. How's that? Millimeters? Notice it says protect and we're using responsible management, but we doubled down on the responsible management thing again. Remind people of the value at the beginning. We explained how they help reduce CO2, co-benefits. We used a specific example, and we asked people to talk about it. That is a solution, talking about it. Make it normal. This is okay. Everybody's concerned. So here's the whole framework. Responsible management, our metaphors, and community solutions for our story. And we're going to go to the next thing. You can follow us on the socials. You can also go to noki.org, where you can find out when we are offering our online crash courses and other training opportunities. And then what I'm going to hand out, and hope I have enough copies for everybody, is the heat trapping blanket. And it starts with the story we're trying to tell. What's underneath that is what that story is driving us away from. Other ways of using it. And then a little fill in the blank script of how to start framing your own conversations. There's another version of this as well, depending on what your learning style and what you're into. So we'll pass these out, but these will also be emailed to everybody in here at the end of the session for a little later. So thank you for your time.
So while we pull up the next presentation, these two tables are kind of small. If you guys want to like merge into one, we're going to be doing some group work. You can even leave your stuff if you want to leave it at your spot. I don't want you to move your snacks and your books and all your stuff. And then also while you're at your table, go ahead and introduce yourselves to each other real quick while we pull this up. It's going to break the ice, say the first words, because you're going to be talking to each other, unfortunately.
But we're talking.
You moving over here? Oh, okay.
Harley.
That's not how it works. Where are you? Oh, it's you. Oh, you're also. Oh, my God. Are you also a student? Or are you?
Oh, there is.
And we're gonna look at this. Lactose intolerance.
I do.
Strong.
We're gonna share.
I work for Indianapolis. I work for an organization called Campus. We work with students, with administrators' offices. Help eliminate plastic use. You guys tomorrow. On that. Yeah, we're here. Oh yeah, I've seen her around.
Do we need more time? Are we still introducing?
In person, so I don't think she like. Yeah, registers. Yeah, yeah.
Yes, you.
Working the lights and Jane, vote.
No, you know, like where do we? You're on, be like, like, on that.
All right, I'm gonna wrap it up. Hopefully, most of you got to say hello to each other. If not, there'll be more time to talk to each other at your tables. It's totally fine. So my name is Alyssa. I'm a part of EcoTok Collective. We are a collective of 21 climate communicators and activists. We're all across North America, and we have students, activists, environmental educators, civil servants, all kinds of people. And our mission is to spread awareness online and educational resources online to especially Gen Z, but anybody on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, etc. Also, to be a part of EcoTok Collective, you have to be a creator yourself. So I work under the name New Lifestyle on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube, and there I'm able to connect with over 500,000 individuals every single day who care about climate change. And if you're in St. Louis, I also work on free community events that are sustainably focused. So if you're in the area, you can always follow and come to those. So we're already in our groups. The first thing I need you to do is I need a dedicated note taker. You probably won't have to stay past, like this says, to give me your notes, but that person needs digital notes. So they have a computer, a phone that they can either email or airdrop. So did you guys want to designate somebody in your group?
Like I am not handwriting. I cannot stand.
Everybody raise their hand if they're the note taker at your group. Everybody? Is this group? You got one? Okay. So first and foremost, every note taker needs to take down everyone's email who wants the toolkit and resources like this sent to them after the workshop. You can pass around the computer to do it or tell them your email.
Also be putting it on the. Immediately.
Yeah, I know, I'm like. Be able to put the.
But I'm not putting you on an email list. You're,
It is one of the.
That's strictly to get the materials. This is not a listserv mail thing.
I know. All you do is always.
Doesn't matter.
I know, let's start off.
I probably, yeah, one of their.
Makes sense. We're gonna make. I will, I promise. You're saying it's hard.
Like that.
You have to know.
It's not.
You want it.
Tonight? Oh.
I just made a handwriting.
Ability.
I improved.
Oh, that's.
Layer up.
Engineering.
Yeah, it's
Sustainability in it.
the brain too. A lot of turn.
Yeah.
You know, we used to say that, 'cause sometimes I'm like,
Hybrid.
actually tell me what
But then I'm looking.
Set.
it means. Small overall, it's an electric.
Carbon.
They're falling.
I was hitting this. Oak Ridge National Lab that it's only whatever, they had this. And I didn't know. Oak Ridge Lab. I went to.
Yeah.
Well, we got, and then, and it kept going down. I mean, we got back to the office with maybe 9 miles left. Starting, drove there and had a charger, but apparently there's fast chargers. We got a slow charger that was like fine, like as much as we could. And
if your group has all your emails written down, can you put both hands flat on the
It was
table?
dicey.
Just so I can physically see. Like, it's still going. All right, we're gonna move on. So within your groups, your note taker is going to be writing down the answers to each round of questions. We have 4 rounds of questions. And what this is going to do, you now know how to have conversations about climate change, thanks to Hannah. But now we need to talk about how we're gonna relay those messages to mass audiences, more than just 1 people on a time. And that's specifically using short form video content, but can translate this into other forms of media as well. It does not have to be short form video content. So the first thing we're going to talk about is hooks. So each group is going to collectively put their heads together and you're going to come up with a collection of hooks. I have a video to show you. A hook is just the first sentence of a video, sometimes first 2 sentences. I have a video to show you of some of our EcoTok creators and their hooks they've used in videos. Keep in mind, over half of the examples I used, these videos have over 1 million views. Some of them have multiple millions of views. And because of that, I want you to pay attention to how they start the conversation, because you can't get very far unless you start it correctly. So you can. I also want you guys to take note, how casual were those videos? Half of them were in their bedroom. I know I filmed mine in my bedroom. The Lahaina hands one, that was in my bedroom. I filmed that video. These do not have to be groundbreaking. Don't feel the need to reinvent the wheel because there's things that have proven to work online. So if you are having a hard time coming up with these, you're overthinking it. Simplify it. And you can go to the next slide and you can see a couple examples here. So I'm not asking you to come up with content ideas for this. So here's an example. Before you blank, try blank. Before you throw away your food, try composting, whatever it is. So I'm not asking you to come up with full content ideas. You can leave these blanks in your answers, but here's a couple to kind of see how you're going to format these answers and what you're going to write down as a group. So I'm going to give you guys a few minutes. You can just turn to your groups now and go ahead and start coming up with hooks together. Remember, you are so encouraged to use your phones. Go to your TikTok, go to your Instagram. What have you liked? There's a reason you liked it. It's not a mistake. So use them. Go ahead.
Is that your hook? That's crazy. I got some ideas. Each be responsive. Think about it. I'm like teachers.
Exactly.
Like a lot of. Saying to Marissa, we had a bunch of meetings. Oh, I'm like, are you kidding me? No. Ones that are like that are like. I don't know what to keep with them. That's like, it's your recorded today. Give me some time. And then it could go into like, watch that. That's skipping ahead.
Look at it. All of a sudden, like, hey. So those are just like. My friend told me.
Like, describe the motion about the. I don't know. I'm trying to. You don't say that. Oh.
Yeah, I mean.
Yes. What's it called, the product?
That's fine.
It's fine.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. You know? So many different directions to go after that. Yeah, young women. What are you doing on?
Like,
Same thing. It's talking about an animal.
okay, there you go. That is a.
Oh, yeah, you have to come up. Just put something in all caps. Just yell. Help it change.
Yeah, so the guy with the sea turtle, like.
Grab that.
Welcome.
Something like. Something that I. One of our, maybe. Everything. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, no, this is not necessarily for the case if you're not like I could try to you know, I just Back behind them, right? It's the echo. It's water. Yeah, I was about yeah, actually, you start off with so,
And I have a care. Have a care, but.
Project, it's.
Yeah, this is why you gotta afford it. It's like you.
Recognition.
Actually. Yeah.
Well, which ones? You play. If you how they're.
Yeah.
Laws on large. But he hired the contractor. He said that. Well, tell me, you kind of. Right. That, then it, then we start talking about. Know where you're tracking. Like it's struggling in the water. That was just.
Yeah.
Just like, if you're gonna be here for preferred. You ready to or do you need to? Yeah.
I'm gonna title this.
I just learned that. Right. I never knew that before. We don't have that. Was ready. Back and then. Okay. And then for the two videos. So, yeah. Otherwise.
All right, did you want to take a couple seconds to wrap up what you're saying to your group right now, and we'll move on?
Like, go down the rabbit hole.
Let me save you some. Let me see.
Before you purchase them.
All right, round two. Now you have your collection of hooks. Now you're going to compile a list of media and data outlets. We had a group do this at the Hollywood Climate Summit, and there was a couple awesome journalists in the crowd. I'm going to throw some of their resources in there, regardless on if you guys write them down or not, because they're really cool. But I encourage you to, again, use your phone, find free resources if possible, so that everybody in this room can access and use them. And I also encourage you to engage with one another on what you actually think a credible outlet is. Why do you think this is a credible outlet? And why do you choose to listen to them or pull data from them? And again, I'll give you a few minutes. Go ahead.
What's up, NASA? Oh, yeah.
Am I the only one? Maybe it's because I'm waiting.
I think also like.
Working with the county. And then
The journalist
thing,
like this.
not a standard.
Related to that, what I love again, I Indianapolis, besides everything,
Go to the thing.
get their email and they put like a narrative that everybody knows. Of all. Times of days. I do.
Certain skeptics.
Drinking.
Yeah. Like that's where it gets tricky to. Not just, I feel like. No, I know. Industry funded.
It's not very relaxing. That was
a lot of.
this white paper on PFAS. They're like, the American. I mean, completely no chemicals in bias and why you should always, I mean, that, this, that. But I mean, if you're like, don't know anything. And then like, that's what comes up, you, if you do, average. Like, national, like.
Yeah, I'm not.
Like. Or I'm like, I'm just gonna like post it generally. I would think that, you know, yeah. Well, and university, like university. So I use.
Oh. Like what if we're talking about?
No, literally, I watch everything.
No,
Literally. I gotta go.
I was inspired. BBC Chicago.
I'm like. Data from like this too. Like academies of science, there's stuff like. Trying to get better about it. It gets so frustrating too. Social media is better than the internet. It's behind firewall. So Instagram, maybe. Yeah, no, we don't have really high quality. That's kind of firmly. I use asking
God.
Yeah.
My mom told me on social media presence. Additional.
music.
That make it.
Like over like. Get it too. I can't believe it. Boston the National Institute.
There's always exception.
It's not happy to talk to
Yeah.
or like try to.
Your attention.
Right, thanks for work. I told guys on this turn.
Yeah.
One of these to do them here. It was funny. For their
Science.
Yeah. And for the shared student. Really.
I'm gonna give you a couple seconds to wrap up what you're saying before we move on to the next round.
Yeah.
I'm getting more about it. You know?
I hate when you go on social media, but that's the link and then it's like.
Specific.
All right, round 3 is keywords and phrases. So this is important. You can post all you want online, and if you're not typing in the right words, no one's going to see it. It is so unfortunate, but you have to do it and you have to know what they are. So these are keywords. These are things you're going to use in your hashtags, things you're going to use in your text overlays, words you're going to make sure you hit in your video so that more people can see your message. Your messages are important. You just want more people to see them. So first, don't overthink this. I will give you each categories. If your category is sustainable living, your first keyword or phrase should be sustainable living. That is the first one in your keyword little toolkit. You can also utilize things like Google Trends. You can type in keywords and it will tell you what people in your country are searching every single day. What are the top phrases, the top words? And a brand new one that happened after I made this presentation was TikTok created something on their platform where if you go like you're going to search a video and you search the word creator search insight, you can search up other keywords and find all the top hashtags around those so you know what to put on your video. And we're going for like 20 to 30 per group. And I'm going to assign you each a category. So I'm gonna have you guys, you're gonna be sustainable living.
Just like things that are happening.
You guys are gonna be environmental justice. All the keywords and phrases under these categories. Conservation. Environmental sciences. Climate activism. Climate tech. You guys get to choose whichever one you want. You can double up.
That one. Yes, that's good. Tag climate resilience. Tomato soup. You know the other. Tag resilient. We'll take this. We're just like. Oh, okay.
Oh, okay, perfect. Yes.
Hashtag climate. Okay, there you go. You know, hashtag safe. Well.
Oh, good idea. I forgot.
There you go. On your own sustainability.
I don't. I don't.
Too long.
What's your personal planet?
Oh, I was trying
so
really
big.
hard. Like.
That's 98 more than I've ever had.
Climate adapt. Or is there?
98 people, for real. I see, look and play that. You guys ever played that game?
Yes.
Yes.
I never played it.
But I feel like it's like having as many words. Oh, yes. Climate activism.
I'm learning a lot of. Action.
Ocean.
Yeah, maybe. General.
The video and see someone like tag something on it. That's or
So like that means.
researching on topic. I have done it. And
Yeah, she was looking.
not-
I've never seen it. Yes.
The thing is
Like.
Oh, that's, yeah.
Said that one.
That's what it was.
Yes. Just thought. Probably. Hashtag climate emergency. Why not?
The word.
Hashtag climate. Hashtag phase out. The real ones, I'm not making them up.
Sustainable development.
All right, if you want to start wrapping up with your groups, move on. Okay, round 4. Now you know how you're going to look for data sources. You know what keywords to use. You know what you want to talk about or how you're going to talk about it. But now you need to know what you're going to talk about. So you're going to compile a list of both. They're going to be separate lists timely content ideas, breaking news, seasonal content, what's going on right now, and your evergreen content. So general ongoing education, how-tos, historical topics, things that are not going away anytime soon. So these should be two separate lists. And I'll give you a little more time than the other ones to do this one, to actually come up with content ideas. This has nothing to do with the last slide and your group category. These are just general content ideas. You can gear them to what you know about, what you like to talk about, and come up with content ideas together.
Oh, I'm saying like.
Summertime, like when we were having all that quality. Gardening. And then, I mean, say like seasonal vegetable. Oh, yeah. Sustainability. Yeah, like I think composting versus recycling, then that you're like pretty.
Idea that people said one way.
I will offer a suggestion on the back of the heat trapping blanket. So we call these reframe cards because we're reframing the conversation. On the back are highlighted words about what things are brought up when we're using heat trapping blankets. So have some resources in front of you.
Choosing an environment.
I was in.
One of the top terms.
Oh.
Like that eating. 7 foot. Has a mustache and he has eyes. Just stare.
Like education. Like what climate change, why?
Yeah. Biodiversity. Oh, yeah. Been huge for you guys? Yeah. Oh, Did we just have the cicadas? I don't know. You guys, you'll be in totality and moving. That's nice. Different like 7. Okay.
Correct.
Yeah, we think Monday. Speak of them tears. There's always a Oh, really? It'd be interesting on how much the reality of how many traffic challenges are. I don't live in West Lafayette yet, but I'm kind of. Like last year. Like I've never. My friend.
Like,
I.
normally I'm-
You know, if I have to like. Into.
like,
Years, so I- that's okay. But about. So we could do, a lot of people, like, yeah. Not that close.
what's a good time?
Well, going back to resource, or like it's news organization. A lot of just like sometimes like. Yeah, 3:30 after. General breaking. All right. Yeah. I can go have to get. Hey, yeah, exactly. You go.
You can tie that into climate change. That into like function of animal. Like,
But you guys, like after. Like. Was like.
he's jacked off everywhere.
And now I'm gonna go out.
And it's college reserve.
Trusting donation. It is. So I was thinking you need batteries.
Recycle.
Food.
Education. But
So we had like a.
like evergreen. Cleaning up the past.
Very environment, but like that.
Like, all right, or just think about it.
I kind of saw that, I thought. Where are you going? I didn't. Yeah.
All right, we want to wrap up with our groups.
These are being.
All right, so every answer that your group has written down, that's going to be shared with all of you. So you're going to get their group, you're going to get their group, you're going to get everybody's group answers, plus some stuff from previous workshops just like this that I'm going to sprinkle in there just because they're good resources. But in terms of what you're going to go and talk about now, this is just a quick little easy to digest chart. It says you need to talk about the intersection of what you love, what you're good at, and what the world needs more of. This part's very important, and a lot of people miss that bottom part of what the world needs more of. But if you're missing one of these things, your talking points are not going to work. You're going to need all three of these things intertwining with each other for what you want to talk about. So now you know what you want to talk about, where you're going to go get your research, how you're going to strategically frame your message, how you're going to start your videos with your hooks, and what keywords you're going to use to help get eyes on them. This is a quick little way I like to plan my week and plan my content, is just to dump, prioritize, break it down, assign it. You can use it if you want, but I just hope you're able to use these resources to tell your story. If I could have all the note takers come to me now and start giving me all of your notes while Hannah is going to answer some of your questions.
Yes.
I have a TikTok account for a nonprofit, and it's actually not into that. How often should I actually post, like the per times post to get videos for that short video?
Good question. So for those who couldn't hear, and for the recording, the question is about how often should you be posting on TikTok and Instagram on the socials?
So in terms of Instagram, it's all going to depend on your account. And I know that's so hard to say, but a rule of thumb for TikTok is they like the more the better. I would say 5 times a week. Ooh, I know it hurts. It hurts so bad, but it's so true. It's so true. And then the rule of thumb for Instagram, they've actually said this, which is 3 to 5 times a week. Anything less than 3, they have literally admitted in meetings that you are going to lose followers if it's less than 3 times a week. And they're also saying reels over posts. Posts are for your current audience. Reels are for capturing new audiences.
Good to know. What other questions do you have? Yes.
My question is just like the realistic hourly input that it takes to make 5 TikTok videos. Like realistically, how many hours? Because
I would imagine it gets better the more you do it.
Yeah, of course, it gets better the more you do it. But it also depends what videos you're making. Are you using a trending audio where you're adding a couple text slides, and you can get really effective information out there. A lot of videos with millions of views, hundreds of thousands of views. How long are they? 5 seconds? 10? Believe it, you can fit a lot in there in the 5 to 10 seconds. And there are different levels to that. I'd say for an experienced content creator, if you have somebody who makes videos often, maybe an hour per video. If you're doing short form, the longer, the more video essay you go, of course it's going to get longer. I know TikTok allows up to 3 minutes now. That's going to drastically increase that time frame. So
and you're talking like actually like being and posting, because a lot of the stuff that we want to do is data heavy. So there's a lot of back end like research.
yes, I'm talking about research excluded, I should say, is about probably 5 hours for short form video content.
Alyssa is getting everybody's email so we can email you all the things. Yes.
You don't have time to do like 3 to 5 videos a week. Just not do it then? Not use Instagram or TikTok, just use Facebook?
Yeah. I don't know. I wouldn't say that. I think it's good to know, and I didn't know this, that Instagram like is giving suggestions of how to do things, that if you were posting less than 3 times a week, you're probably not going to get followers. So for me, it would be about like making a plan, prioritizing it. There's a lot of messages. We can do this. And I know our social media team at the zoo has a calendar because we have so many amazing messages to get out about our conservation work and the cute new baby tigers and climate change and, summer camp registration and all of those things. We're a huge organization, and they actually have a plan, and they have things. Some of it's just pre-created at that they're ready to go. They've already got the script or whatever it is. And I know that's helped them post a little more regularly. When I first started at the zoo, our socials were not the best, and sort of I couldn't find a pattern of when they were posting. But knowing that I have to go to them a lot saying, hey, can you post this climate change thing? I've learned what their process is they do have a calendar, and they know that they're going to do like at least 2 cute animal videos a week, like, and filtered out, but they have an actual like sign up sheet almost to help organize when they were doing that. And that also takes time.
You don't have a dedicated. board,
Right.
somebody's job.
Right. But if you have, maybe you have just like a Google Doc where you throw stuff in there just to help. So you don't have to like every week come up with something. You could just have, next staff meeting, dedicate some time for some strategies of what messages you want to put out there, make the list, and work out when to post them. Alyssa, I hope that sounded okay. Who's the pro? Yes.
I'm curious, like when it comes to social media and TikTok, like how important it is to have like a personality driven content. I feel like, so I also help make content for my nonprofit, and I feel like I feel like a lot of the sustainability accounts that like get really viral have like, it's like an individual. It's not like an organization. It's like, I'm an individual, like very personality driven. And I feel like when you're making content for a nonprofit, it's much less about me and much more about like that we're doing, which is maybe less sexy and less appealing to people. So I'm curious, like what you think about like, yeah, like the personality aspect, how a nonprofit can like maybe if that's important, like bring that into the content that's created.
Yeah, I like how you mentioned that they have a personality or almost like a character sometimes. It depends on the person. So before I was doing this full time, I worked for like media companies that talked about sustainability, and they grew 500,000 on TikTok, 300K on Instagram. And the way they did that is by having a personality behind their mission, and everything was mission driven and sometimes even data driven. And they were still able to add a personality and a character. And that's can be one person on a team, that can be 5 different personalities on a team, which is actually incredibly valuable. If you have multiple people working on your content, there's ways to sprinkle in personality. And if anybody wants to talk about like one-on-one more specifically, like you want me to look at something, you can see me after this too.
Somebody like think about what and what's being talked about, what the keywords are, and then let's like create content that will pull that in. Is that recommended rather than saying like we have this message that we want to get out, let's think through what the keywords are.
So I always think of social media as like a service job. Like you are serving an audience, so you do have to reel them in. They're not owed your time. So they're not going to spend time just because you came across their feed. And so that's why we use the hooks and the saying like that. Just coming out and saying what you need to say is not always enough. Because even getting to the point, they don't really know what they're strapped in for watching your content. And that's how I like to think of it. What are they strapping in for? Why do they need to stick around? Does that answer that?
I think you can do it. I think you can do it either way. But the idea is to keep in mind whether your process is to come up with the words first or have your message and then do the words that come out of that. The point is like, what are you doing that's going to make them stick around?
What would the intersection be learned through your presentation and then the strategic framework, or specifically on a social media platform, or are they kind of separate?
We were very excited to work together. I will tell you that we hadn't met until we were paired up for this presentation, and so we met beforehand. And what the Noki strategic framing will be good for are those key words that we know is sticky for people in their mind, and knowing that we need to tell a complete story and that you can do that really quickly. So once you come up with the story that you want to tell, then you can make these videos, and you can make the videos a series. Like you could make your posts a series, like come back for part 2, you know, or, you know, you can say something. So what happens is I usually in my conversations and when I'm doing this training, I half joke, you want somebody to say like, what do you mean climate change is impacting insects? And I said, oh, funny you should ask. Have you heard of the heat trapping blanket? You know, like, so you use this to help you tell the story, knowing what's going to work for the brain and for people's hearts. And then you can put it into the format that.
Yeah, that's basically it. Is that what Hannah taught you today is bulk, the body of your video essentially, or your content.
As an organization, like strictly uses Facebook, the youngest person there by like a minimum of 10 years. How do you go about convincing that this is something that we should be doing as an organization to basically get cases that aren't?
I think a lot of that can also be showing examples of success stories that already exist. Maybe even your potential competitors who might be on those other platforms gaining success and attention, and maybe even funding, depending on what kind of organization you're with, and showing how they grow and what they did, and basically convincing them that there's more opportunities for that like democratic way of getting more views compared to platforms like Facebook.
Data.
Show my
Give them
age.
the data. We are just 2 minutes past time. I have some cards up here. We're happy to stick around for a few minutes to answer any other questions. But thanks for coming through. We will be emailing you digital copies of some of the information here as well as some additional stuff.